Hey everybody, today we're going over the large bruiser item changes that are upcoming. Riot is calling it an adjustment, and while it is being adjusted, I think you'll see by the end of this that it is being adjusted for some, and it is just a hard nerf for others. So this is going to be a bit more of a slow burn video. We're just going to go through and we're going to talk about all of these changes. You can use this video as background noise, or you can just listen to it while you do other stuff. I will obviously, show you guys what I'm talking about as we're talking about it, but without further ado, here we go. So they're changing Divine Sunderer, Goredrinker, Trinity Force, Sterak, Gage, Death Stance, Black Cleaver, Ravenous Hydra, Maw of Malmortius, Hexdrinker, Horsebound Axe, and Blade of the Ruined King. So going to these changes, the first one we have is Divine Sunderer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Divine Sunderer. Now, Divine Sunderer is losing 100 HP, and it is gaining 5 AD. I would think that everyone can agree that this is a nerf. Divine Sunderer is losing strength here. I don't think there's really an argument to be made. This is going to be a recurring process. You see here, they're effectively removing tankiness from bruisers and adding damage for no reason I can really think of, but there we go. Then we have Goredrinker, which is one of the oddly hardest nerfed items, right? I don't even know what the fuck they're doing anymore. So this is losing 150 HP and gaining 10 AD. I'm not really sure what's going on here. This might overall seem like an adjustment if not for the fact that Goredrinker scales on HP and was one of the more defensively minded items. It's a little bit of a loss to its cost effectiveness, but I think as compared to Divine Sunderer, who gets healing, and Divine Sunderer is a much stronger item, let's be clear on that one. Divine Sunderer is much stronger, so it getting nerfed a little bit harder doesn't hurt it as much as Goredrinker, which is the weaker item, and again, the active scales on health. So when you have an item that scales on health, losing 150 health and gaining 10 AD, that's not really that big of a buff, is it? But so, I mean, you can see what champions will be hurt more, what champions will be helped more. Obviously, some champions like Riven will see this Goredrinker buff and like it more. The next up is Trinity Force. Trinity Force is gaining 100 HP, but it is losing 3% damage per stack. I'm a little bit torn on this one. I think that this is overall a buff, actually, when we consider some of the later changes here. Nobody really lasts long enough for you to get the full Trinity Force stack. It does hurt its turret pushing, which is one of the things that I think, that's one of the things that kind of pushes it into being potentially more of a nerf than a buff. But I think gaining the HP is probably better overall, at least for fighting. And there's some later buffs to things like Blade of the Ruined King that I'll go over that help it. So there's Trinity Force. I'm a little bit torn on it. So we have Sterak's Gage. This game is this item is hard nerfed. So the heal is removed entirely. There's just no more heal. The AD is now 40% bonus, or sort of base damage. Now, you're not gaining base damage. It's taking 40% of your base AD and converting that to bonus AD. It hasn't given base AD in 4 years, and they're not bringing that mechanic back. If you remember, Sterak's Gage used to be 50% base AD, so even compared to where Sterak's Gage used to be, this is a nerf. The shield duration has gone from 4 seconds to 3.75, so the shield now decays. A lot of people, if you remember that means you will never actually get the total shield. A lot of people seem to look at this change and think, oh wow, but the shield is stronger in 1v1 and weaker in teamfights. No, it's going to be weaker overall for everyone, because the decaying means unless they instantly pop this shield, instantly, it's going to decay. And remember, you typically lose about a third to a half of it because of how it functions. The shield no longer stacks. In other words, the shield doesn't, you don't get 8% max HP per enemy you're healing on, you now just get 75% bonus HP. So overall, Sterak's Gage is still hard nerfed. I think this item will still be required to not be burst down and killed, but the thing is, the people who build this item are now going to be significantly weaker, particularly because they didn't even give it the 50% base HD it used to have. If you remember back in Season 10, it used to give you the full 50%, now it only gives you 40%, so Yeah, so overall Sterak's Gage is hard nerfed. Yeah. This stands. Some people seem to keep thinking this item is being buffed. It's being nerfed, and I'll explain why. So plus 200 gold cost. It now deflects. I'm gonna say deflects magical damage as well. So instead of only being physical, it's now physical and magical gets mitigated. So I'll say mitigates. That's probably a better term. The amount, instead of being 3515, is now 3010. So it reflects, diminishes, mitigates less physical damage, but now it also does magical. It does not have magic resist though. The heal is going from 15% max HP to 175% bonus AD. So the heal is nerfed. And how nerfed is it? The example I use here is if you have 200 bonus AD. Now that would be 3-4 items in. That would mean you would heal 350. So 350 would be if you had under the old system 2,333 HP. So in other words, if you build a single health item, the majority of champions cannot heal more. The only champions who could heal more than this are AD assassins or champions like Riven or Aatrox that are building pure damage. In other words, for the vast majority of champions in the vast majority of situations, the heal is nerfed. Then the other change is the heal is only within 3 seconds. So what that means is that under the old system, if you got an assist, you got the heal. Now you need to damage an enemy within 3 seconds to get the heal. This is another nerf on the stance. Maybe it was probably a good idea because it was a bit fucky to heal half your health bar with Death Dance and Triumph hitting you. Well, not half, but a fourth of your health bar just because you got an assist like 12 minutes ago. But on top of nerfing everything else, to also nerf that feels bad. The last change here is the mitigation applies to shield damage. Now that seems a nerf targeted directly at Riven. So yeah, well, that might have been a good idea like 3 years ago to finally adjust that Riven can use Death Dance to effectively take 30% reduced damage from physical damage overall. When you now hit Riven in her shield, it'll still get mitigated, so then once the shield ends, that damage you did to her into the shield will bleed over afterwards. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so it's nerfed on Riven pretty hard. Is it still good on Riven? Maybe, but it's nerfed overall. The cost went up. It mitigates magical damage, which is literally the only buff here. So mitigating magical damage is literally the only buff. But then the heal is nerfed. The heal is nerfed again. The shield spamming is nerfed. The gold cost is nerfed. I should say physical mitigation minus 5%. So we have a nerf, another nerf, a nerf, a nerf, nerf, 5 nerfs, but at least it mitigates magical damage. So big nerfs on Death Dance. Then we have Black Cleaver, which is getting plus 5 damage, plus 5 ability haste, but going down 100 HP, which is a sizable nerf. For anyone wondering, 5 damage and 5 ability haste is not worth 100 HP, particularly because this item wants you to stay alive longer to actually shred armor and use its effects. Ability haste also has diminishing returns. Whether or not you want to admit that it does, putting increasing amounts of stats into ability haste, taking your ability haste from 40 to 42% is not really that big a deal. Going all the way to 50%, unless you have a champion who can literally press every button on cooldown and get impact on it, you're going to want to wait at least a split second to use your ability to actually hit it. So there is a point at which you don't really want to continue to stack more ability haste. There are a few champions who can use it, but for the majority, you kind of hit that 20 to 30% ability haste threshold, and if you go beyond that, you can get to about 40%, I guess, but you have to sacrifice a lot to get there. So putting this item up to 30 ability haste at a mere 350 HP at a mere 45 damage with an effect that's weak, and I'm going to say the Black Cleaver effect is weak because, let's be honest here guys, it doesn't do that much damage. People die so quickly that, first off, the full movement speed is 18. A full movement speed of 18 is not that much. And the 30% armor shot is good, but it requires you to hit someone 6 times. That's why Black Cleaver has fallen out of favor on practically every champion other than Riven. So as we get to the buffs, so we can see that bruisers have basically been nerfed across the board. They then tried to compensate with Ravenous Hydra gaining 5 damage, which is a bit confusing because Ravenous Hydra gives Omnivamp, and most bruisers have realized that actually Omnivamp is kind of a shitty stat. If I could just pull up here, Riven's stats right now, we have Ravenous Hydra at 2% pick, 3% pick, 1% pick, 3% pick. You combine all the pick rate on every item slot for Ravenous Hydra, you might get to 10%. That's not good. Those people realize Omnivamp is terrible on bruisers, and that it's just not that good. Adding 5 damage to it is not really that good. So far, the only champions who can potentially have seen a buff here are AD Assassins and Death's Dance, which is confusing. It's like the person doing these changes doesn't actually understand items or how the game works or classes at all, and it just kind of seems like someone is very salty and nerfing bruiser items. So then we have Maw of Malmortius. Now Maw of Malmortius is getting +5 damage, +5 ability haste. Shield scales on damage now, and you get +12% Omnivamp on proc. So once again, we have Omnivamp is a very weak stat that bruisers don't want. Now, for those of you guys who don't understand, I do have a video on Omnivamp. If you want to go look at it, that's great. It goes into this in great detail. The quick note version is that AoE effects only get 33% of Omnivamp. So this 12% Omnivamp is only 4% Omnivamp on Riven's ultimate, on Riven's Q, on Riven's stun, on Aatrox's Q, on all this stuff. It's not really that good. The only champions who really use Omnivamp that well are high single target damage champions like Jax, Aurelia, stuff like that. So for ability based bruisers, no. Maw of Malmortius is getting a big buff, but once again we see that they're buffing it primarily for AD Assassins. The increased AD, the increased ability shield, the shield scaling on damage. I'm not going to do the math, but I'll tell you that it's probably only going to be stronger once again for AD Assassins. So we can see here the AD haste, these are good for AD Assassins. The shield, that's good for AD Assassins. The Omnivamp, I don't think that's particularly good for AD Assassins. I mean, it's good for like Kha'Zix. Talon is mostly AoE other than his passive. Zed is mostly AoE. Kiana is mostly AoE. So other than like Kha'Zix, this is not even that great. Maw of Malmortius was basically an unusable shitty item. We can see that the shield is still only magic damage, meaning it's still basically worthless. Which is whatever. Hexdrinker is gaining +5 damage. I don't... So this is the third AD Assassin buff we're seeing here. I'm not really... Actually, I don't really understand what Riot is even doing. So we've buffed AD Assassins, we've buffed AD Assassins, we've buffed very specific champions like Camille with Ravenous Hydra, who can still even use it. We buffed AD Assassins. That's it. Okay, so... Hearthbound Axe. Now that is the item that you build into Blade of the Ruined King and Trinity Force. So this item is getting a 100 gold cost reduction. That helps you build into Trinity, and it helps you build into Blade of the Ruined King. Which, by the way, Blade of the Ruined King is getting 12% damage again. So remember us talking about Trinity Force. Trinity Force went from 200 to 300 HP, but it lost damage. But we can see down here, Blade of the Ruined King, I should put the 100 gold cost, just to be fair. It's going up 100 gold, but the max HP damage is going to 12%. Again, Those you remember, this was 2 years ago. They had it at 12%, and it basically dominated all of top lane and rendered the lane extremely shitty, because if you couldn't use Blade of the Ruined King, you basically weren't viable. So we're going back to that number of 12%, which I don't understand, because the whole problem when it does too much damage is that if you can't use Blade of the Ruined King, the people who can use it are just going to run you down and massacre you. So when we have nerfs to Goredrinker, when we have nerfs to Divine Sunderer, when we have nerfs to all this crap, and the only buffs are to Blade of the Ruined King and potentially Trinity Force, oh, and I guess Ravenous Hydra, we can see that what are we pushing here? We're pushing once again a meta where you rush Blade of the Ruined King and you just stomp everyone to the nuts. I truly believe whoever is doing the balance here has no idea what they're doing. They are probably very new to this job or something. I don't really understand, because these are really bad changes. these are really bad changes. So yeah, that's it. That's for this video. What I think is going to happen, I think Goredrinker users are, I mean, they're already basically out of top lane, but now they're definitely going to be out of top lane. The only exception can possibly be is that Riven might enjoy the damage more. Riven might potentially enjoy the Black Cleaver and Goredrinker buffs more. She maybe could use Maw of Malmortius. I mean, Death's Dance was deliberately nerfed on Riven, so Sterak's Gage also nerfed. I'm not really sure this, yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, I think we're going right back to ranged champions are dominant, except for the few champions who can use Blade of the Ruined King, because we're going to see Blade of the Ruined King be utterly dominant in top lane again, because we've been here before. We have literally seen these exact changes before. These literal exact changes, we've been here before. We've done this before. So, okay. And that's about it, honestly. That's about it for this whole video. Thank you all for watching, thank you all for subscribing, thank you all for being a member of my Patreon. If you're a member of my Patreon, the link is in the description. Thank you all for being there, thank you all for watching, thank you all for liking, thank you all for everything. I appreciate all your support, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.